So I'm 16 years old, and I get my first car, a total hoopty. A 1978 8-passenger Vista Cruiser paneled station wagon. I loved that car. I would have slept in that car if I could have. I kept practicing and practicing, getting ready for my driver's test, and I loved driving. Problem is, I failed my driver's test 3 times. See, I had the capacity to drive. I just didn't have the ability to drive because I couldn't pass the written test. That's exactly like the children of Israel. 3 months after they come out of Egypt, after 400 years of oppression. Now the question for them is, now what? As they wander through the wilderness of Sinai, they come to Mount Horeb. It's also called Mount Sinai. And God says to Moses, 3 days, I'm going to tell my people how they can live, capacity and ability. Tell them that I love the whole world, but that they're my special treasure. Moses goes down to the children of Israel and asks them, are you guys ready for this? They said, we will do everything the Lord commands. So God says to Moses, tell the children of Israel that they're going to meet with me in 3 days, and that I'll appear in the midst of a pillar of a cloud. That was to show that he had God's full authority on him. And so for 3 days, the children of Israel were instructed by God to scrub their clothes and to prepare the boundaries around the mountain, the parameters that they should follow. I know on the surface it sounds somewhat arbitrary and capricious, but that isn't the case. It was to show the children of Israel that you don't take God lightly. Daybreak, 3rd day. The mountain spasms, the earth shakes and the ground quakes, and God in a pillar of smoke hits the top of Mount Horeb. Moses, he says, go down, get your brother Aaron, come back up. And when Moses and Aaron ascend to the top of Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai again, God gives them, the children of Israel, his covenant, the 10 Commandments, his promise, his law. The first one, God said, you should have no other gods before me. It's not that he's the best of many or he's the greatest of all. He's the one and only. He's the only true and living God. Don't make any graven images or idols, because God can't be contained in anything that man could make or use. Don't take the Lord's name in vain, anger, or haste. Only use it in reverence. The 4th commandment, and the final one that dealt with God's relationship with his creation, is this. Remember the Sabbath. The day that God chose to rest, we're supposed to rest too. Honor your father and mother. If the first 4 commandments deal with our vertical relationship between God and man, then the last 6 deal horizontally, how we deal with each other. The very first one of these is to honor your parents. It's the only commandment that contains a promise that God will bless if we follow that commandment. Do not murder. God calls us to respect life and recognize that he's the Lord of it. If you think about it, adultery and stealing, the 7th and 8th commandments, are the same thing. Both involve taking something that doesn't belong to you. Don't bear false witness. It means don't lie. It's just as bad as murder. It's like killing someone's soul. The final commandment, don't covet, means don't desire something that isn't yours. So how important were the 10 commandments? They were so important that they actually put the tablets in a box. They called it the Ark of the Covenant and carried it with them everywhere as a sign of reverence. The last things I want you to know is that there's nothing magical or special about Mount Horeb, and we called it Mount Sinai. It was special just because it was the place where God chose to meet with his people. Just like there's nothing magical or overtly special about the Supreme Court, which is over my shoulder. It just happens to be the place where we as Americans have our law interpreted. So please remember, the law can never make anybody good, but it can restrain evil.